The British demands on changes of the EU treaties ahead of the British referendum on membership in the EU has been overshadowed lately by the migration crisis and the recent terrorist attacks. But when EU leaders met in Brussels for the last summit of the year, the controversial UK issue was finally put on the table. The British Prime Minister David Cameron was pumped up when he came to Brussels, and before he entered the meeting, he promised to put up a fight.
But we're pushing for real momentum so that we can get this deal done. So I'm going to be battling hard for Britain right through the night, and I think we'll be getting a good deal.
At the same time, the Council President Donald Tusk, leading the meeting, was not at all ready to give in to the British demands.
The consultations I have led with all member states show goodwill, but it doesn't change the fact that some parts of the British proposal seem unacceptable.
The quarrel is about the UK's request for treaty changes ahead of the referendum taking place in Britain next year. David Cameron wants the UK to stay in the EU, but only if he can get some changes in the terms for the country in the European club. The British Prime Minister has put forward 4 baskets of demands. 1. Making sure that non-euro countries are not discriminated vis-à-vis member states that have the euro as currency. 2. Reducing the burden of what the UK government sees as excessive regulation while enhancing the single market. 3. Allow the UK to opt out of the EU ambition for an ever closer union and also give more powers to national parliaments to block EU legislation. 4. And this is the most controversial point, restrict access to social benefits during 4 years for migrants coming from other EU countries that work in the UK. Basically, the last demand could mean that a Polish worker doing the same work as a UK citizen at the same job, also paying the same taxes in Britain, would not have the same social benefits. For many, this is, as Donald Tusk put it, unacceptable. However, after a late dinner on Thursday, the EU leaders were a bit more optimistic on finding a solution.
Leaders voiced their concerns, but also demonstrated willingness to look for compromises. Building on this positive debate, we agreed to work together to find solutions in all 4 baskets raised by Prime Minister Cameron.
As for David Cameron, he did not at all fight all through the night as he initially promised, and after the meeting he also saw a way forward.
It will be very hard work, but there is a path through this to a better deal for Britain.
Still, no one could really describe what will be the way forward. The talks will continue and the EU Council President Donald Tusk will come up with a compromise proposal before the next summit in February. Bruno, Waterfield, correspondent for The Times in Brussels, thinks that in the end there will be a compromise, and he says that David Cameron has softened.
I think that it's pretty clear that he has taken a step back, but it's also pretty clear that he thinks he's got something in return.
Bruno Waterfield explains that Prime Minister Cameron is under a lot of pressure at home, and if he cannot get a deal that is good enough for the British people to accept, and if he will get a no to the EU in the referendum, he will have to reconsider his position as Prime Minister of the UK. So now the Council President Donald Tusk only have a few weeks to come up with a deal that both the EU and the UK could accept. The future of David Cameron as British Prime Minister, the future of the UK in the EU, and also the EU cooperation as such, all depend on this deal.